Today's video, we're going to discuss the verbs that are very irregular. And we're actually going to talk about the very irregular verbs, the J-changing very irregular verbs, and the four totally irregular verbs. So it's kind of three sets of irregular in one, even though they're all somewhat similar. So TLDR, if you just read this, that's the quick version. But number one, all of the verbs that you're going to see today, all of these totally irregular verbs, minus the twin sets, which are like numbers 3 and 4 right here, they all get the same endings, regardless of whether they're AR, ER, or IR verbs, which is kind of cool. And there are no accents, so that's really easy. As a side note to that, where number 2 says, instead of the eron endings, some of these verbs are going to get heron, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then 3 and 4 are these twin verbs that I'm talking about, ir and ser. They are identical twins, literally conjugated 100% the same. So you will need context to figure out which one's being referenced. And dar and ver, I would call fraternal twins. They look very similar, but they're not identical. The same endings, essentially, except for use the D as the first letter for dar, V as the first letter for ver. That's the TLDR, but let's kind of jump into it. There are 12 verbs that we are going to really focus on, sometimes referred to as the dirty dozen. They get these funny stems. So like querer goes to quis, hacer goes to hiz. You guys are going to find this in the inside cover of your book. All of these verbs, so again, querer, hacer, andar, traer, they all get these funny roots. But not only that, this one's an AR, this one's an ER, this one's an IR. It's a mix. And it doesn't matter. If it's an AR, ER, or IR, it does not matter. All of these get these endings right here. Now, I will say deceirs is a slight bit different, and we'll get to it in a minute. Trier is a little bit different, and we'll get to it in a minute. But essentially, these endings right here. So you could say andar would get anduv, and you could say anduve, anduvimos, anduvo, estar, estuve, estuviste, estuvo, venir, vine, viniste, vino, poder, pud, pudimos, pudistes, pudieron. It does not matter what the ending is, they all get this ending set right here, which is cool. There are 3 sets that we're going to focus on. U changers, so words like andar, they get a U added, so andar gets anduv, caber, coup, estar, estuv, and so on. I changers, like querer gets quis, changes to an I, venir, vin. Hacer goes to ith. We have to be careful of the LA form. That one is super strange. Instead of eco, it's going to be etho, which with a Z to preserve the sound. It's kind of like a reverse kargarzar, a little bit. Those ones, the U and the I's, they form sort of the bigger set. And then we also have these ones called J stems. And these ones have one conjugation is slightly different. And I'm going to show that in a minute. But conducir will get a J, conduje, condujiste, decir, dijo, dijimos, producir, produjisteis, produjeron. And so we'll talk about some of those in a little bit. But these are the irregular roots of the 12 that we're going to focus on. It's more like 14 here, but nonetheless, we're going to focus on these ones. Irregular conjugation endings. For I and U, we get e, iste, o, imos, istes, ieron. Those are for I and U. So U, I. J stems get the J endings, and the only difference is that instead of ieron, like the I and U, we get eron, and these ones get a J. So if I look at decir, where there says dij, if I want to do the eos form, it's dijeron instead of dijieron. That's all. So the only slight difference is in the eos form that you're going to see between I and U and J changers. So here's how this works. Here are my U changers. Take any of those stems and add any of these endings, and that's it. It's done. So estuviste, pusimos, supo, tuvieron. Just picking some and adding the endings. Anything from the left, the stem, add it to the endings on the right, and we're good. Here are the I changers. Again, it'd be like quise, quisiste, quiso. If I went to venir, vinimos, vinistes, vinieron. Just taking the words on the left and moving them to the right. Like I said, the only irregular one, hacer, this is not H-I-C-O because that would be pronounced eco. Instead, we want to keep it a soft sound, so we're going to go etho. So this would be ethe, H-I-C-E, ethiste, ethimos, ethistes, ethieron. But here, because this is the letter O, as opposed to E's and I's, we're going to add a Z. It is essentially like a reverse Kargarzar. And with the J's, notice, look at the chart where it says J group endings. Notice this one says eron, whereas on the previous slide it said eron. So here we have conduje, condujiste, condujo, all those are the same. Condujimos, condujistes, all those are the same. The only one that's different, condujeron, dijeron, produjeron, trajeron. So these are considered J changers, which is the second major set we're focusing on. So just take the stem, add it to the ending. There are some links right here that you guys are going to have in the actual presentation form of this, so you can simply click on the presentation that's in the agenda for you guys, and you will get these links. This just has the irregular stems, so we can practice them, so you could know that, for example, Carrera goes to Keys or Venier goes to Veen. And also a really annoying song, but it works, and it's terribly annoying, but it's functional, so you should watch that a million times, and you will know these forever. I do want to talk about the twin verbs that I mentioned before. So we have ser and ir. Yo diría son gemelos idénticos, identical twins. Notice, literally, this is the form fuiste, this is the form fuiste. Fuistes, fuistes, fueron, fueron. There's no difference. So in the preterite, if I say ser, nosotros fuimos. If I say ir, nosotros fuimos. You're going to hear this one used more. A lot of times this gets into a different tense, but this still happens. This absolutely still happens. So context is your friend. If it's before the word simpático, probably going to be ser. If it's before a phrase like a la tienda, probably ir. Makes sense when you start hearing it and practicing it, but it does take a little bit of context and practice. But they are identical. No changes whatsoever. Which brings us to the last ones, and these are dar and ver. Dar and ver would be mellizos, which is fraternal twins. They get the same ending, so I put the endings on here. Iste, io, imos, hicieron. No accents again. And for dar, for example, I just get it to its root, which is a D, and I put a D before all of this. Di, diste, dio, dimos, distes, dieron. The only difference between dar and ver, even though dar was an AR and ver is an ER, they're going to look almost identical, mostly like an IR verb or an ER verb. But the only difference here is ver is, instead of the letter D, is V. So instead of D, it's going to be V. Instead of diste, viste. Vio, vimos, vistes, and vieron. And honestly, that's it. It's as simple as taking our funny little stems that we have and adding this new set of endings that we also have. And also, these four irregulars that we have are a bit strange, but everything that you see on this whole presentation, everything that you see here, it's going to come down to practice, practice, practice. A lot of memorization, a lot of practice in order to remember the stems, the new endings. There isn't a perfect system. Just learn the stems, learn the endings, and you should be good to go. If you have any questions, please reach out to me and let me know. And good luck.